This past week, the news has been quite ridiculous, if I do say so myself. There was an entire article written about Hitler's penis, a new email drop from the alleged Epstein files that don't exist, according to some, claiming some odd actions between Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, and yeah, just some other craziness with the government shutdown. So we're going to talk about that. What I really want to make the main focus of this show, though, is going to be that, well, the economic situation here in the United States and across the world, for that matter, is completely untenable. We're going to talk about that, the reason why I believe that's the case. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Now, before we get going here today, I thought I might share something with you that, I'm a little late on the ball on this, but I think the new national anthem for the United States has come out. So let me just play that for you guys.
Torah scrolls keep on turning. Just 2 days and we are through. Then we start from the beginning. Hashem's holy words begin anew. We all have come to help Hatzalah, and we want to help it thrive. Based right here in God's holy city. Throughout this land, it's saving lives. Sweet home, Yerushalayim. Yeah! Where God's words ring so true. Sweet home, Yerushalayim. Lord, I'm coming home to you. Well, friends don't think it's Jewish. The United Nations call us crooks. But Donald Trump claims it's all Israel. Just as it says in all the holy books. Yeah!
Oh, man. Okay. Well, that is just phenomenal, if you ask me. Yeah, again, I'm a little late on the ball on dropping that one to you guys, but the first time I saw that, if you are unaware of who those individuals are, that is Trump's his former U.S. ambassador to Israel and his current ambassador to Israel, both David M. Friedman and Mike Huckabee, singing "Sweet Home Yerushalayim." I can't. I mean, it's comical gold. However, in saying that, I do want to address a claim that was made on the last show. There was a comment that was left out, calling me a pussy and saying that I'm actually a groiper. For those of you that don't know what a groiper is, I'm not fully in tuned on it. It goes to show how much of a groiper I really am. But basically, from what I can ascertain, it is a follower of Nick Fuentes. And yeah, I have some major issues with that. Number one being I'm not a racist. I do not make my whole worldview based on the fact that the whites are superior and we need to keep America a white country, quote unquote. That being said, there are some things that he says that I agree with, as I think there is with basically anybody in the world, and there's a lot of things that I disagree with. So, no, I'm not a groiper. I don't base my whole ideology on race and thinking that we need to keep the country white. Yeah, I just don't really share many beliefs with the man Nick Fuentes. That being said, if that's what you want to think, if you only watched one episode or whatever, I have no problem. You can call me whatever you want. You probably drove up all the amount of views that we saw last week, so I appreciate you. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to claim that any one group is the problem for anything. I think I laid out pretty well in a show about a month ago now all of the different problems that we see from criminality's aspect. And there's quite a few issues that we see as a group of white people, as a group of black people, as a group of Hispanics, and so on. So believe whatever you want. I'm never going to claim that something is the Jews' fault. Do I have issues with the Israeli government? Absolutely. Do I have issues with AIPAC and the amount of seeming control that they have over our government? Yeah. And a lot of that has to do, too, with an individual that our government is seemingly unwilling to release the true facts about, and that is Jeffrey Epstein. So if you did not see this email that came out, I just want to share it with you. I'm not going to be able to post it on the screen because the text is going to be pretty small, but the text of the email is between, I believe it's between Mark Epstein, so Jeffrey's brother, and Jeff himself. And it goes on. There's a bunch of other stuff, but the highlight that everybody is going on, if you haven't seen it in your social media feed, it's hilarious for all intents and purposes. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But the quote that's going around that everybody is talking about is the point when I believe it's Jeffrey says to Mark, talking about Trump and saying, "Ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba." So that went around and made the rounds, basically claiming that Trump sucked off former President Bill Clinton. It's one of the funniest things. Do I believe it to be true? Probably not. But that being said, this guy is seen in circles with Jeffrey Epstein. Anything could be up for grabs. And it makes one wonder whether this might be why Trump has been so reluctant on releasing the Epstein files, as maybe it doesn't show he's a pedophile, but maybe he is caught, possibly on photo, maybe video, giving a blowjob to the former president. So, and you can claim, and I claim that I don't really think that it's true, but you never know, considering that these files don't come out. But one thing that may make you think that this is possible is this video right here. So let me just put this up for you guys. So there you have Trump shaking the shorts of Bill Clinton, and it's just freaking bizarre, man. So anyway, just wanted to make mention of that. That is part of the news that has come out in the past week, and it is honestly comical. Throughout the whole government shutdown thing and things like the recent headline that came out that they took a sampling from a couch, claiming that it was Hitler's and saying that Hitler very possibly suffered from some sort of issue that many people have that leads them to having a micropenis. All of this has really been surrounding a lot of the trying to subvert the Jeffrey Epstein files coming out, and making it less of a story, but it just seems to keep finding its way back in. So I find that comical. I hope you guys enjoyed that part. Now that I'm past the kind of quote unquote bullshit news, I want to get on to the real stuff of today. And that is the fact that economically speaking, I believe that we are in a situation that is completely untenable. Now, why might I say this? Well, the President of the United States has been coming out over and over again claiming that the economy is great, economy is doing so well, we're in the golden age of America, and I think it couldn't be further from the truth. One thing that was highlighted in the government shutdown and the debates on whether to reopen and how to reopen was surrounding the healthcare debate. And this was a big issue because basically what was happening was that the Affordable Care Act, the subsidies are ending. With those subsidies ending, people were looking, on average, I believe the increase to premiums on healthcare was going to be something around 50 to 70% increases. Now, think about how high they are, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Those are really not going to get paid. The people are going to be off of insurance, and nobody's going to be insured. And it's a big problem. From what I understand, they signed a very brief continuation in order to get through the next hump, but it's going to be a conversation again. From what I'm reading and the sources that I'm listening to are saying that it's going to be an issue again in December. So the can has just been kicked slightly down the road when it comes to healthcare. And that's just one aspect. You hear Trump coming out saying, oh, the Thanksgiving dinner at Walmart is down 25% in cost year over year. And stocks are going great. The tariffs are bringing in so much money. We're going to give out $2,000 checks. Like, those worked so great the last time, COVID. But with that being said, I want to run down what the expenses look like for just the average American today. So how I decided to do this exercise was to base it off of $100,000 salary. Why did I want to do that? Is particular to me, but I wonder if maybe a lot of you had the same thought. So growing up, when I was a kid, all I could think about was if I could possibly get to $100,000 salary, I think that I'll be able to make it in life. It didn't matter what I was doing, whether I was going to end up playing baseball, end up working with my father's company. It didn't matter what I was doing. I thought if I was able to get to that $100,000 mark, then I think that would be okay. And as I'm reaching that mark myself, it is kind of dawning on me that it's just not enough money. Now, as a kid, if I had reached that at, the age of 6 or 7, I think I would have been doing just fine. The problem is that I'm reaching it as I hit the age of about 26, 27. And people around the country are not feeling this. The average income, which is not the best marker to use, the average income in the United States is something like 66,000, I believe, 64,000 per year on an individual basis or as a household income. And I believe that the median is actually less than that, somewhere around 61. So you take that into account, $100,000 is still well above the median earner in the United States. And now I want to run through what the problem with that is. So when you look up what the average out-of-pocket cost for $100,000, it comes in a lot of different categories. But first, we'll start with taxes. On average, someone across America, this does depend on, what kind of state taxes you're looking at in terms of income, state and local taxes, and all of this stuff. But you're going to be somewhere around the range of 27.2% of your effective tax rate. Now, that's after your rebates, it's after everything. So that is what you're going to be paying on average across America. You take that out, that is something like $2,200 that you will never see every month. And just to make this easier for you guys to understand, take home on a $100,000 salary before taxes is going to be something like $8,333, roughly speaking. So that's pre-tax. Post-tax, you're looking at something more like $6,000. Okay. Now you have $6,000 to work with. If you're going to go get your own housing, which average American's going to have to do, you're going to spend about $2,000. If you're going to deal with transportation, meaning that you have a car, you pay for the insurance, you pay for the gas, you pay for minor fixes along the road, maintenance, you're going to spend roughly $1,000 a month. So there's $3,000 out the door before you even pay for some of the other stuff that most people are paying for. So let's look at other insurances that you might need. So that's going to be health insurance and your, renter's insurance. You pay both of those. Now, healthcare was a tough one for me to find. I'll be completely honest with you, because a lot of people have employee subsidized programs, but the average American will say that they don't have employee sponsored healthcare. You're going to spend another something like 300 to 400, plans that I'm coming off parents insurance here, and plans are at least $400 minimum just so that I don't get the state penalty. So I would venture to guess, New Jersey being a little different, you're going to spend roughly $300 to $350 a month on that. Go ahead and add in your renter's insurance, which isn't too expensive, but you're also going to come in somewhere around $400 for your other insurance needs. Now, go ahead and take out life, go ahead and take out anything else, and you're adding to that number, but I didn't do that for this exercise. So just from there, so you have your car, you have your house, you have your other insurances, you're already up over $3,500 in payments just before you even help yourself out. So you're left with $2,500 at that point. Now, you're going to go obviously have to get food and drink. Roughly on average, the American is spending something like, I want to say the figure that I came up with was something like $400 to $500 at the grocery store every month. And if you wanted to go out to eat once or twice a month, you're going to spend another $200, we'll say. So you're somewhere around $600, give or take, dollars for food and drink. And that's without, much entertainment going into it. Now, odds are, if you're earning $100,000, then you have a pretty good chance that you're going to be paying student loans at this point. And then an average student loan across the country is somewhere around $300 a month. I came up with $280, but we'll do $300 just so that it stays roughly round. Now, the other thing that you want to consider, of course, is something like, entertainment or living some sort of life. For those expenses, you're going to spend something to the tune of $300 or so a month, whether that's, a subscription to some sort of TV watching, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, any of those, or you actually have a TV service, which is even more expensive. And, going out to, a concert every few months, going to a sporting event, any of these things are included in entertainment, right? So you do that. And the last thing that I think everybody can agree is that you're going to need internet and phone. And when you pay for your internet and your phone, you're going to spend roughly, well, it depends on if you're paying for your phone or you paid for it outright, but if you're going to spend for your phone and the plan to use the phone, it's going to be roughly about $70 to $100 a month. Okay. And one thing that I did forget to mention is utilities. So that's your heat, your oil, your gas, and your water. So you're going to pay roughly $200 to $250 a month on that. So you add all that up. Remember, we started with $8,333, roughly speaking, per month that you have. Take out taxes, you're down to about $6,000. You add up all those numbers, and you're left over for savings something like $1,000, and this is for a single individual. This is for someone that is completely by themselves, doesn't have anybody to worry about, doesn't have a girlfriend, doesn't have kids, just by yourself. You're completely alone, right? You're left with something like $1,000 left. Now, of course, if you're following along, I didn't mention that, you might have an employee-sponsored retirement plan. You're roughly, if you're going to spend into that, you're looking at anywhere between 1% and 3% of your income at a minimum going towards that. So, somewhere around, we'll say a minimum of $3,000 per year. You put that in, you're going to spend roughly $400, another $400. So you take that away from your $1,000, you're left with about $600 that you can put away into the bank or towards your savings for buying a house or saving up into an emergency fund. $600 per month. That's for if you're single. That's a problem. I think that you have only $600. We look at the average home price across America. I want to say, I didn't look this up exactly, but I believe that the figure is still somewhere around the mid 400,000s for a single family home. So you want to put down 20% on, we'll make it easy, a $400,000 house. Well, you're going to be looking to save up $80,000 for a 20% down payment, and then you need to make the monthly payment after that. So you do that math. You're going to need to save up consecutively every single piece of that income that you had. So we'll say that you have that extra $600 left over every single month, and not 1 cent of it's going to go to a major car repair, a major medical bill. Every single bit, every penny is going to go towards you saving up for a home. The American dream, as many would put it, it's going to take you over 133 weeks. That's almost 3 years straight of diligent saving every single time in order to get home. And there's one key aspect that I'm sure if you're following along, you said that I forgot, and that's taking a vacation. So that's taking no vacations. That's doing really not much fun other than satiating your minor need as a human for having entertainment by keeping it all local, no vacations, and saving diligently for a home. It's going to take you roughly 2.5 to 3 years. I don't think that that's possible. Now, you factor in that you want to take a vacation, something like on the average, I want to say, not necessarily that you have to go out of the country, but we'll say an average 1 week vacation is probably going to cost you, I would say at a minimum, $3,000 for yourself. You can basically wipe away whatever savings that you have, and you are living month to month, paycheck to paycheck. And you wonder why so many people are resorting to credit cards in order to save the gap. If you are resorting to taking out loans or personal loans in order to cover the gap, that's why, because you really need to do nothing with your life in order to try to save up for this American dream. Like I said, this home. Now, it gets even more grim, I will say, if you have a family. On average, people would have a family of 4, 2 kids and a spouse. So we'll say that you're running that $100,000 off of that. Now, if you're doing that, your net income is going to be a little higher. You'll have dependents to deal with. So you roughly take home $6,500, right? Going off of this, you're going to have $2,000 housing for a single family home. Your healthcare, however, has gone up to something like $1,200 a month at a minimum, and that's without anybody having anything chronic or anything going on. If you only have one car, Your transportation is still going to be something like $1,000. Your utilities is going to go up to something like $250 to $350. If you're going to have food, you're going to be spending more like $800, and that's not going out to eat one time. Your student loans are probably going to be doubled. You might have something like $400, we'll say, on student loans, and childcare is going to be roughly $1,100 a month if both parents are working. Be a little less if only one. And entertainment goes up as well. You're looking at something more like $900. Again, this is not budgeting for any sort of vacation for your family. You're not living any sort of life. And again, as a kid, I thought that $100,000 was a great income to make. Oh, what you're left over with before any retirement savings, before anything like that, you're left over with something like $150 as a family of four earning $100,000. And this is where I get to my point that the economy is in a place that is no longer tenable. And it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else in this country that's going to try to tell you that things are going great, things are going well. I don't believe them. You can't really believe them. Things are not going in the great direction. Things are headed pretty far south. And one of the biggest issues, of course, that we all live with every single day and every year, year over year, is inflation. Trump has gone out multiple times over the past few weeks and even months saying that, inflation has come down significantly since Biden and this, that, and the other ever since COVID. And while that point may be true, here's something that is not really often, if ever, brought up. And that's the fact that, inflation may be coming down, but in fact, it actually needs to be reversed in order for the people to feel the effects. Prices need to go down because if the inflation is slowed down, but is still inflating, if the economy is still inflating, something that increased, on average, I want to say that the rate, I don't have these numbers in front of me, but the rate of everything increased, prices of everything, I should say, increased something like 10 to 20% through COVID. And the years following COVID were just as bad for a while, like something like an average of 8%, 5%. So you add up that, what could have been something like a 30 to 40%, 50% inflation rate over 5 years. But you still have that 2, 3, 4% inflation rate every year. Things are not getting cheaper. They're building off of that inflated price already and inflating even more. So although inflation, like Trump says, is down, and that's not a point to disagree with, in order for the economy to start recovering, prices actually need to go backwards. And that's something that in an economy like ours, it's impossible. Prices don't ever come down. Prices only go one direction. And we are in quite a bit of a pickle here. Now, when it comes to solutions that I may have so that I'm not just yelling out at the sky, old man yells at the sky here, there are some solutions that I think are on the table, and they're not going to be things that a lot of people want to do. That being said, when you talk about housing, the number one cost in most people's lives, I mentioned $2,000 is about the rough average across the country for a single family residence. In places like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, those prices are going to be higher. California, anywhere like that, they're going to be higher. Places like, Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, those prices are going to be lower. That being said, it's all economically relative, right? The average, we're talking about the average American in this whole experiment. The average income at those areas where the housing costs going to be lower, the average income is going to be much lower as well. It really correlates. So what do we do? I think bringing down that housing cost is going to be number one. And I want to throw in there, we do have a Montville resident who, my hometown, is looking to run to fill Mikey Sherrill's seat here in New Jersey. His proposal is to, of course, lower housing costs. He's quite a progressive. So, Mr. Chaban, I may disagree with you with a bunch of things. I would love to have a conversation with you. It seems like you're unwilling, so be that as it may. But he wants to run on lowering housing costs. And one of the biggest questions that I would want to ask is, are you willing to do the work that's required in order to do that? And what does that mean? We need to open up the floodgates for construction. And I couldn't agree more. But the problem with opening up the floodgates, why that can't be done? Well, zoning restrictions are impeding building in places like New Jersey, New York. Zoning is a huge problem. Regulations on building is a huge problem. It's the biggest snafu that any person that works in and around construction, like myself, is going to tell you. why it's so hard to build. You build, say you're looking to build a multifamily and apartments and stuff like that. Every single time one of these big projects goes up, it gets stopped for something environmental, whether there's a special species of frog that needs to be saved, there's a special kind of algae that we need to protect, whatever it may be. Every single project runs into one of these. And that could even be the case on small scale residential single family homes being built. They all run into these regulation and zoning issues. So that's problem number one. Okay. We need to work on that as a country and specifically as a state here in New Jersey that I know people like Mikey Sherrill, my friend Shaban, he's not going to work on. They're not going to work on. That needs to be acknowledged and needs to be tackled. That's number one. Number two is an issue that not many people are willing to swallow the pill on. And that's, Trump had a great idea. Deport the illegals. Get rid of people who don't belong here. They are breaking the law by being here. And I couldn't agree more. However, with that being said, as I talked about multiple times in the show, you run into a lot of issues when it comes to different industries that rely on labor that is not truly legal. But one of the biggest problems that it's butting into now with having this much illegal immigration is that they are taking away homes and residences of people who reside here legally, who are real citizens. And if that is the case, we have, estimates are somewhere between 30 and 50 million illegal immigrants here residing in the United States. That is 30 to 50 million residences that are, well, I should simplify that. Some of them are families. That's at least, we'll say 10 to 20 million residences that are unavailable to the average American citizen. That is automatically taking away from the pool that American citizens can access. And that's a huge problem. And until our country, and I would say my state as a particular aspect, until we are able to face that problem honestly and confront it head on, housing prices are not going to go down. And in turn, many other asset prices are not going to go down. Same thing can be said for the amount of vehicles that are on the road, the amount of people that are taking up vehicle stock that shouldn't be in this country, the amount of people that have access to jobs that people in this country would like to have. It all gets affected, and it all affects the way that the average American is feeling this economic tension right now. So one way, of course, is that zoning and regulations. Another way is that we need to take the illegal immigration situation a lot more seriously. And I'm not saying that from a racist perspective. I hope you can hear it in my voice and what I'm trying to explain to you. It's an economic perspective. We are hurting our own people in order to make other people that don't belong here legally feel better about themselves and have a way of life that is actually equal to an average American citizen. And that's not right. It is taking away from our own citizens. Some other things that I think can be done in order to lower costs in general. There's a lot of issues that actually go around the farming techniques and what is able to produce food. That's a huge part of why food prices have gone up so much, is the overregulation of the farming industry as a whole, farming livestock. Now, does there need to be regulation? Am I saying cut all the regulation and let them go free? No, absolutely not. As I think everybody is aware of the thought experiment that if you left corporations to do their own, would they ruin the environment in order to save some money? And the truth of that is absolutely yes. So I don't think that all regulation's bad. That being said, whenever you're regulating, say hiring standards or making people go out of their way to do things that are not productive or not going to help out in terms of making things at a lower cost, you are hurting the economy. You are hurting the ability of citizens and people in this country in general. You're hurting their ability to feed themselves, to house themselves, to get themselves the right nutrients in order to live just a normal life. So with all that, you can have Trump claiming about the cost of fuel and energy going down, and that's just not true. Fuel really isn't far down from where Biden was. It's definitely not approaching how really across the board it was affordable to get fuel, and especially diesel fuel, across the country. Those levels haven't returned to the first Trump term. And that's another factor as well. You can't believe him when he says that prices are down, because they're down slightly relative to Biden, but they're just not back to how cheap it was to move product across the country underneath Trump's first term. That's another huge driving cost for food is that freight. Stuff needs to get to places, whether you're talking about butchered livestock or whether you're talking about farm products in general. All that stuff needs to get somewhere in order to be sold, and it can't right now, not at a cost effective. And that's why we see those inflated prices of everything. Now, when you combine those factors, the cost of fuel, the cost of food, over regulations, and the cost of housing, and you start adding all of those up, everything kind of affects each other. And that's why we're looking at such a dire situation in terms of the economics here in the United States. Now, if we're able to move on from that, if we are able to get ourselves into a better situation, then very plausibly we could start to see prices come down. But until that point comes, and until Trump, I would say, takes himself away, not just Trump, our political leaders in general, until they take themselves away from what it's like to be away from the average American person and living in their own pods, especially out in DC, until they come back to real life, until they start talking to people again, I don't think we're going to have any real change. And, most of the people that are affected by the policies that are being enacted at the highest level, they really are all in a little bit of a crowd that are, for example, where I'm getting with this is one of the main reasons, and one of the reasons that I don't think that the main reason Trump wants to hide the Epstein files, for example, I don't think the main reason is because he got caught sucking off Bill Clinton, because I don't think that's probably the case. What I do think is the case is that one of the biggest reasons that he got elected was the massive injection of cash from very wealthy people. You look at people like the Adelsons, for example, pumping money into his campaign in order to help him get elected. There are a lot of very important people that aren't really politicians. They're not leaders of state, but they're still a part of that Epstein cover-up and that Epstein scheme that are probably implicated in those files. And in order to keep himself, and this was actually from Thomas Massey on an interview, so I don't want to claim like this idea is my own, but he made a very good point in the sense that Trump is beholden to these people, very much so. And if he wants to keep his own head above water, if he wants to make these people happy and make sure that their investment wasn't crapped on, he's not going to release these files. And so, in the same sense with that, I would think that Trump and his coalition in the White House right now are way too involved with their donors, with the people that put them in office, and they're not really fighting for the interests of the constituency that actually got him into office. So if things don't change there, if the political leaders are not going to get back in touch with us regular people that live out here in the world, then I think we're going to continue to look at this situation. And just to wrap up here, I know that whole exercise that I just did was based on a $100,000 salary, and I hope that you kind of got the gist of where I was going with it. Understand, and I know I made this a little point, but understand that the average salary across America is not $100,000. It's closer to $60,000 to $65,000. You look at the median; it's a little lower. It's something like $61,000. If that situation is true, just imagine losing out on $35,000 a year, or roughly $3,000 per month. Look at that as the average. Look at that as the ability to afford, and just take away from the numbers that I was laying out. It's a really, really hard situation here now, and gotta be able to fight against this narrative that I think the Trump White House is putting out, that we are living in great times. The Democrats are doing a good job, obviously, of calling it out now, and they're finally seeing a resurgence in their numbers after getting devastated last year. But if things don't start going more towards the average American and continue to go to what I will call our oligarchy getting built up, things are going to continue to gut out that middle class here in the United States. That American dream is going to slip further and further away from our young people. And it is just getting to the point now where things are really bleak. So I'll leave on that note. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I hope you enjoyed my exercise. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of how I did in terms of, my math, putting things together, and let me know if there were any corrections that I can make, and I'm more than willing to do that. I'm not claiming to be a demigod and I got everything right, because I know I didn't. But I thought it was interesting to run through what $100,000 was. Again, when I was a kid, that's what I always looked up and tried to make. And now that I'm getting closer and closer to it, it is not looking as good as I thought it was when I was a kid. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
I wish I were the fucking state. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.